India has emerged as a major diplomatic force at the world stage.
The rising cost of living in Nigeria continues to impact citizens from all walks of life.
The citizens of Gujarat witnessed a mega roadshow here in the city of Ahmedabad.
China is South Africa's largest trading partner for 134 years straight.
A domestic aircraft carrying 72 people on board crashed in Pokhara city in central Nepal.
165 injured have been moved, 61 people are confirmed dead, and rescue operations continue around me.
After receiving an entire season's rainfall in a span of 48 hours, Chennai city has literally been brought to its knees.
South Africa, for WION, World is One.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I actually pushed myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
I'm Ananya Datta and I'm back with another edition of Race to Power. Here's what is lined up. It was election day in South Africa. Voters are outcasting their vote, which is being touted as the most competitive election in the country's history. We get you live updates from the ground. Just 5 months to go for presidential elections in the United States. While Americans in large numbers are tracking what the contenders are doing, many of them are actually quite bored. We tell you why. Polling is underway in South Africa's general elections, and this is shaping up to be the most competitive election since the end of apartheid. Voting started at 7 a.m. local time. They are choosing 400 members of the National Assembly, who in the coming weeks will then choose a president. Now, this is the biggest test for the ruling African National Congress. Now remember, the ANC came to power after apartheid ended in South Africa. In 1994, Nelson Mandela received 62.5% of the votes. Thabo Mbeki then took the reins from him in 1999 and came back with a bigger mandate. In 1999 it was 66.36%, then in 2004 69.69% with an even larger support. It dipped a little with Jacob Zuma in 2009, and since then it has been on a decline. Last election was the first time ANC received less than 60% of the votes. This year, it is being projected that the party will receive lower than 50% of the votes. Of course, we don't know who that will be, but this is what it's being projected.
This is the day when South Africa decides on the future of our country, who should lead the government of South Africa, and I have no doubt whatsoever in my heart of hearts that the people will once again invest confidence in the African National Congress to continue to lead this country.
Out of the 62 million people, about 45% have registered for this year's elections. That's about 28 million voters. A little over 23,000 polling stations have been set up, 70 political parties, and interestingly, for the very first time, 11 independents are also in the fray. Many in the country are fed up with high unemployment that is at its highest right now. Other issues include rampant crime, corruption, scandals, and regular power cuts and water shortages. Now, last year, the economy grew a meager 0.6%, and that is definitely a way of concern. Let's listen to what the voters have to say now.
So it's very exciting for me also because of all the different parties, in addition to that, the independents. It gives our democracy, I would think, a little bit of spice. I do believe that it will change the structure post this election, and I do think that it will make our democracy much more mature.
I come to vote because we haven't got water, no roads, so we like you if you can create the jobs for the young people.
We are young and there's no job for youth. We have degrees, we're not getting a job. There's no difference, actually. So I'm here to make a difference, to vote for MK.
I feel so happy. I feel like we will be able to see some changes. Just that the people we are voting for won't take us fools. It's my first time to vote today, and I have hope that there will be some changes with the struggles that we have.
I just want to be the first one voting keep ANC. I'm sick and tired.
The whole road is full of potholes, and we have a lack of water. The other village doesn't get water. So we want to vote so that they can bring us a good service delivery.
Well, I'm very excited. I understand that it's a very important decision to make. So yes, I'm excited, but very nervous because it is a big decision. Yeah, 30 years of democracy is a very long way that we've come. So I just want to continue to help our country get to a better place.
Now to take this further, we are being joined by our correspondent Kaldain Ongu, and also for Perspective, writer and political analyst Kim Heller is joining us live. Kaldain, if I could quickly start with you, how has the voter turnout been so far and what are the voters saying?
Well, Ananya, here in Johannesburg, it's just gone past 4:30 p.m. There's less than 5 hours until voting closes. But looking at the numbers around Johannesburg, where I've been driving around various polling stations, it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. At least here where I'm currently, there's a queue here still going strong. Early I was in Johannesburg CBD, the heart of Johannesburg. The queue there were thousands of people were still in line. So I really do not know whether people will, whether the 9 p.m. deadline mark will be extended or not by the IEC. But of course, that's a question that we'll be throwing at them at 7 p.m. press briefing that they'll be having. But what the IEC earlier in the day, in the press briefing, they said that initially they had estimated about 66% of the registered voters may turn out, but they said that that number is likely to go higher. So many people, actually, some of the volunteers that I've been speaking to at these various polling stations say that, you know, elderly people saying this is the first time actually in many years that they've seen number of people turning out to vote, whether be it in CBD or townships or even suburbs, to answer to your question. So many young people actually in Johannesburg CBD that earlier where I was speaking to them, they said, they are going to make their voice heard. It's time for change. But also there were some other youngsters in townships actually telling me they're not going to cast their votes because no matter which party comes, their life is not going to change. But going back to your question about voter turnout, like I mentioned, IEC has estimated the voter turnout is likely to go higher than the initial estimates of 66%. And remember, as you mentioned in your read, that there are at least 28 million people have registered to vote. Ananya?
Right, Kaldin, it's always good to hear when the youngsters are actively tracking what's happening in the political arena of the country. Ms. Heller, if I could quickly come to you now. ANC's Cyril Ramaphosa of course, seems to be very optimistic about the results of this election. But what is your analysis? Do you think this election is actually put to test, in a way, Nelson Mandela's legacy?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the channel. I think that the ANC is going to get just below the 50% mark. And that's a significant dip from its overwhelming mandate, as you were saying, in 1994. We've seen a progressive dip in the ANC, and hope amongst the electorate that the ANC would herald in a better life has not manifest. And listening to the voters that you interviewed, they speak about corruption, about unemployment, about lost opportunities, about no electricity, and that has become the everyday of South Africa. So Cyril Ramaphosa, as the current president, has fared very badly. In fact, it's under his administration that the ANC has had its lowest polling. And I think we're going to see the results of this being extremely low, but perhaps not as low as some of the analysts are saying. I think it's going to be in the region of about 48%. Nonetheless, that's an extremely significant dip in the support of the ANC.
Right. Ms. Heller, stay with us. Kaldin, if I could quickly come back to you. Anti-incumbency is usually common in any election, not just to South Africa, but in any country. It's very easy to blame the government of sorts about the contemporary issues. But what other choice do the voters in South Africa have at this point?
Well, Ananya, if you go around in the country, around people speaking, whether you speak to young people of the country, whether you speak to the elderly, everybody has the same thing to say. They are fed up. I know, in many a times they say, do not blame the government. It's your duty also to do certain things. Do not rely on the government for everything. South Africa's government actually, they have announced grants, a housing grant, there's a child grant for, people that cannot afford. But at this given point of time, it seems like the citizens are fed up of this free handouts too. Young people, as you say, they say that they were born after apartheid, they're born into the democracy, but for the last 3 decades they haven't seen improvement. In fact, the support base for ANC has been dwindling over the last 30 years. So as the expert Kim Heller explained there, saying, Cyril Ramaphosa, under his leadership, ANC support base actually fell to 57% in the last elections. And this year, even if ANC comes into power, even if they do not fall below 40%, they will be forced to go into coalition with smaller parties. Now, the big question, will that actually work for South Africa? Will there be more infights? Currently, this is something some of the experts say that they don't see it working at all. Or will the main opposition party, that's a Democratic Alliance, if they get a majority, if they get, quite a few number of voters from the last elections, which they got 20%, if they go into a coalition with other parties, what will happen then? So the question now is about, if at all ANC loses its majority, it will be forced to go into coalition. So everyone is speculating what happens to the country now. Will there be an improvement or will it get worse?
Ms. Heller, quickly picking on what my correspondent has been saying, the what-ifs of this election result. Give us a global perspective. What can the election result in South Africa this year actually impact on the global scale?
I think it will impact quite largely, and especially if we look at the African continent. I think if the ANC had to fall, it's almost like another blight on the African liberation project. We will see shifts in economic and foreign policy I mean, one most notable would be if the DA and ANC had to merge, we would probably see a relaxed stance on the Israel-Palestine crisis. And we'd probably see even a move away from BRICS if a centrist type coalition comes into play, which I think is the most likely scenario. And we might see in that situation the US and Europe gaining a foothold in the continent via South Africa, because they've been ousted out by some of the newer African leaders. So I think it will have implications in terms of the geopolitics of the continent and in terms of the future of BRICS. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Kim Heller, thank you so much for your insights. Good to have you. Kale Nongmu, thank you so much for getting us all those updates from Johannesburg. Wow. Let's focus now as the US presidential elections inch closer. A new poll reveals that majority of Americans are following the news and developments around the upcoming elections. The survey ahead of the November 5th elections reveals that over 58% of American voters say that they are closely following news about the presidential elections. The number indicates a higher trend as compared to 52% in April of 2020. Like the last election, this number is expected to rise as the poll date comes closer. However, that's not the full story. While a large number of Americans are following news about the presidential candidates and election-related matters, many are also experiencing fatigue over election coverage. 62%, or 6 in 10 Americans, are worn out by the endless coverage of candidates and their campaigns already. 35% of Americans, on the other hand, say they like the election coverage. Several analysts say that a Biden-Trump rematch in the presidential elections might be a major factor contributing to the fatigue among the voters. A new day, a new election pledge by UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. In the latest poll promise made by the ruling Conservative Party, Sunak says that he will create 100,000 jobs if the party wins the general elections in July. In the latest flurry of policy announcements, the Prime Minister has promised to create 100,000 high-skilled jobs a year by scrapping what he has referred to as rip-off degrees. As per the ruling party, the policy on job creation would be funded by scrapping courses that have a high dropout rate and low job progression. The Conservatives say the cost of creating 100,000 high-skilled jobs would be around £885 million by the end of the next Parliament's tenure in 2029-30. The Tories plan to pay for the policy by shutting down the worst-performing university degrees, which the party says would save an estimated £910 million. The latest pledge by the Conservative Party is the latest election promise after Sunak pledged to cut taxes for pensioners and also introduce mandatory national service for 18-year-olds. Since the UK Prime Minister announced early elections that took leaders across party lines by surprise, the Tories have been scrambling to kick off their election campaign amid dismal ratings in pre-election surveys.
Thank you very much for your time.
All right, the election fever has gripped the United Kingdom. Reform UK's honorary president, Nigel Farage, has announced that he is not standing as candidate in these general elections. Offering his full support to Reform and its current leader, Richard Tice, a multi-millionaire and former Tory donor, says the choice between Labour and the Tories is uninspiring. Launching Reform's campaign, the honorary party leader says the party will field candidates in all but 20 of the UK's 650 constituencies. They will contest elections in 630 seats across England, Scotland and Wales. According to polls in the national vote, Reform UK is at 5th position with 9% support. Labour Party stands at the top with 41%, followed by the Tories with 20% of support, with Liberal Democrats taking the 3rd position and Green Party taking the 4th position. Reform insists it is targeting both Conservative and Labour voters, but evidence from recent by-elections suggests the Tories have the most to fear from the party, which Farage led from 2019 to 2021 when it was known as the Brexit Party. And with reports emerging that Reform UK may not win a single seat in the elections, the Conservatives have been warned Reform may split the vote and risk the majority in various seats.
war is over. We have won.
Georgia's Foreign Agents Bill, which has been at the center of protests and controversies for weeks now, continued to make headlines. In a bid to ensure the bill becomes a law, the country's lawmakers voted on Tuesday to override a possible presidential veto of the bill. The next report getting you more.
Lawmakers applauded after Georgia's parliament voted on Tuesday to override a presidential veto on a foreign agents bill that has plunged the country into crisis. Earlier, while expressing his opposition to the measure, a member of parliament was hit in the face with water thrown by a representative on the other side of the debate. The bill would require organizations receiving more than 20% of their funding from overseas to register as agents of foreign influence, while also introducing punitive fines for violations, as well as onerous disclosure requirements. Western nations have called the law Russian-inspired, and it has come to be seen as a key test of whether Georgia, for 3 decades among the most pro-Western of the Soviet Union's successor states, would maintain its Western orientation or pivot instead to Moscow. The U.S. condemned the vote, while the EU said it was considering all its options. Protesters outside Parliament, like Ika Gagari, expressed outrage about the result.
We know where they take our country. It's not about the law anymore. It's about their decision to distance Georgia from the West, from the EU, from the NATO, and take Georgia to the direction of Russia and make Georgia the ally of Russia. So this is what is happening now, and we are ready to fight.
Large numbers of riot police were deployed around the parliament building, where they have used tear gas, pepper spray, and water cannons against protesters in recent weeks. The Georgian government, which says it still wants to join the EU, has accused Western countries of blackmail over their opposition to the bill. Russia denies any role in backing the bill, which it has defended from Western criticism.
We're now slipping into a short break, but don't go too far. On the other side, we will tell you what the market analysts expect from the election outcome in India. Stay tuned.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at wion.com.
Africa's youngest nation goes to the polls in December as politicians of all hues, including current South Sudan's President Salva Kiir, jostle for power. A philanthropic organization urges rebels to surrender by dropping hundreds of thousands of flyers from a helicopter above their strongholds in dense rainforests. And an ancient game called Kora promotes unity and tradition in Algeria's mountains. Watch Wild of Africa at these times on WION. Wild is One.
Welcome back. You're watching Race to Power with me, Ananya Datta. Democratic Republic of Congo finally has a new government after elections were held in the African nation over 5 months ago. The country unveiled a new government on Wednesday after successfully ending months of deadlock that followed President Felix's election in December last year. Addressing the delay in government formation, a senior official said that it took time for different parties in the ruling coalition to reach a compromise. And as per reports, the new cabinet has 54 ministers as compared to 57 in the last government. The announcement comes just days after the DRC army had reportedly thwarted a coup attempt. 4 people, including the coup leader, were killed. The country's army had also arrested 50 others involved in the rebellion, including 3 American citizens. Let's shift focus now as India concludes its weeks-long general elections. Analysts anticipate significant market movements based on the election outcomes, with a focus on policy continuity and economic stability. However, concerns over low voter turnout and potential changes in capital gains tax add a layer of uncertainty. Our next report getting you all details.
India's general elections are coming to a close and Prime Minister Narendra Modi is poised for a rare 3rd consecutive term. Opinion polls indicate a likely victory for Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party. Analysts predict this will significantly boost shares in sectors such as defence, infrastructure, railways and capital goods. These sectors have seen impressive growth over the last 12 months. With stock prices rising between 64% and 480%, outpacing the Nifty 50's overall 25% increase. Modi's administration has focused heavily on improving India's infrastructure and boosting domestic manufacturing. This includes a record $133 billion proposed for infrastructure spending in 2025. A continued BJP government is expected to maintain and accelerate these efforts. However, concerns linger over low voter turnout and the potential for an unclear mandate. This could trigger market volatility similar to the 17% drop experienced after the 2004 elections. Beyond election results, investors are wary of possible changes in the capital gains tax regime, which could impact market stability. Global brokerage firm Jefferies has flagged this as a significant risk. Despite these uncertainties, analysts remain optimistic that Modi's re-election would ensure policy continuity and attract further foreign investments. The final election results will be announced on June 4th, setting the stage for India's market trajectory. Business Bureau WION World is One.
And with that report, we are wrapping up this edition of Race to Power. Thanks for watching with me, Ananya Datta. Goodbye.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays, 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Africa's youngest nation goes to the polls in December as politicians of all hues, including current South Sudan's President Salva Kiir, jostle for power. A philanthropic organization urges rebels to surrender by dropping hundreds of thousands of flyers from a helicopter above their strongholds in dense rainforests. And an ancient game called Kora promotes unity and tradition in Algeria's mountains. Watch Wild of Africa at these times on WION Wild is One.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
Hello there, you're watching Fine Print on WION Wild is One. Thank you very much for joining us at this hour. I'm Eric Njoka. The headlines. Israel's National Security Advisor says the war against Hamas in Gaza could go on until the year's end to achieve the aim of destroying the Palestinian militant group. According to reports, Brazil has recalled its ambassador to Israel and will not immediately appoint a replacement, ratcheting up tensions between the two countries over Israel.